Next week is my high school class reunion in my hometown of Columbus, Ohio, home of the national champion Buckeyes, of course. Any idea how many years it's been since I've graduated high school? 70. Well, I'm ignoring that one. If you said 20 years, we're okay. If you said 10, I love you. But believe it or not, I know I don't look that old, it's been 30 years this year. 30 years. So I have a picture here from commencement ceremony. Look at that young kid right there. And after noticing your reaction of seeing that one, I know you want to see more pictures of me that age. So I have one of my senior photos up here. Look at that. You have the wonderful early 90s sweater. Everybody loved that. And that glorious hair. Oh man, I miss that hair. My wife Stephanie and I have 4 children, and our youngest is going into high school this year. She's 14, and she recently saw these photos. And she saw this one, and she said, "Dad, you used to look kind of decent. What happened to you?" And it was like a sincere question, like, there's something wrong with me. And after I swallowed hard, I said, "Aging, honey. Aging is what happened to me." And then I found great joy saying it's going to come for you too. That how you look now in the mirror when you're doing your, it's not always going to look like that. It changes. You know, one of the challenging parts of being a parent is trying to help your 14-year-old realize that everything that matters to her now won't always be the case. That things that she thinks are important aren't really that important, or the things that might be crucial, she might be ignoring. That cute guy, or being the most popular on the drama team, those things won't ultimately matter. So our work as parents is creatively trying to help a 14-year-old in some way that we can think less about what matters at 14 and more it was at 30 or 35. Because sometimes the coolest guy at the party when you're in high school is incarcerated at 30. Or the gal that everybody thought was the best has a very difficult life 10 years later. Or some of those teenagers that seem to not fit in as well in high school are thriving later on in life. And you know, I think our Creator kind of relates to us in a similar way, us grown-ups. He is pure love, pure goodness, pure beauty. He is only seeking our best all the time. But oftentimes, what's best for me isn't what I'm thinking about today or tomorrow or maybe even for next year. He's thinking about ultimate things that I'm not always giving attention to. And just like a 14-year-old can't imagine the pain that could head her way if she made a lot of terrible choices right now, sometimes we can't imagine the pain coming for us now and definitely into the future beyond that might await us. You know, with that 14-year-old, if you're a loving parent, you don't just let them do whatever you want. And so sometimes because you love them and you're thinking about the future, they say, "You're just a pain in the butt." But I think the same thing might happen at times with our Creator. When we talk about divine warnings or old words like sin, it just, seriously, is the man upstairs no fun? Aren't there better ways I could use my weekend than having some old guy tell me what things I need to avoid in my life? And I can admit at times, organized spiritual or religious gatherings can feel like that. Sometimes when I'm sitting out there and not standing up here. I'm like, this isn't super exciting. It's not fun. But a loving parent seeks what's best for their child, not for their child to be excited in the moment. And our loving creator and sustainer, the source of everything, is seeking what is lovingly best for you, not always what's fun immediately. So let's start at the basics. I think you've been talking about the 7 deadly sins this summer. I think Pastor Forrest called it the summer of sin. Sounds exciting for the entire family. But maybe this is your first week and you haven't been a part of this series. And honestly, sin is kind of a old-timey word, not one that we always use today. So I want to start off by defining it with a little apology. I'm not trying to be offensive. But I'm going to quote a British writer, Francis Spufford, who I think has given the best contemporary definition of sin that I've read. Spufford says, what we're talking about here is not just our tendency to lurch and stumble and screw up by accident. What we're talking about is the human propensity to F things up. That's his definition of sin. That you and I have a propensity to F things up. Another Brit from 100 years earlier, G.K. Chesterton, says, original sin is the only part of Christian theology which can really be proved. It's so true that even if people aren't Christian and aren't sure if they buy in, they're like, yeah, that is true. Humans have a propensity to mess things up. Now, I want to be clear, Christian teaching historically is not that you are evil or a terrible bad person, but it is that you have the potential to become evil or a terribly bad person. Because we are all sinners with that propensity to mess things up. And Christian teaching says that if you and I are going to live well, if we're going to be integrated, mature, whole human beings that do good in the world, we're going to partner with the Spirit of our Creator to work against our natural grain. We're not going to just be, this is who I am, deal with it. We realize we have to work against that to actually live well. Just like a wise teenager realizes following their gut or their feelings in the moment is not always best. Us grown-ups have to learn the same thing. The ancient Jewish text, the book of Proverbs in the Old Testament, chapter 14. There is a way that appears to be right, but in the end it leads to death. There is a way of life that in your gut, in your feelings, intuitively in who you are, you're like, that's what I ought to do. And the Spirit says, yeah, and that's part of the problem. Because whatever that is within us, oftentimes, is off. I have a good friend who just this week, I found out that their partner is very ill, critically ill. So I dropped everything and went to the Community Regional Medical Center in Fresno. When I got to the patient's room, there was only a nurse there. My friend and some other family had left, but the nurse let me in. And so I sat there waiting for my friend, sitting next to a patient who I've never met before, who was going to die this week, who was younger than I am now. So I'm sitting there for about 15 minutes with the pumps and the machines, and obviously the patient not even knowing I'm there, so I don't know what to do, so I just pray. Pray for the patient, pray for my friend, pray for their family. Prayed for 15 minutes till my friend came and gave me a big, long hug. But as I prayed for them, it seemed like the Spirit kept bringing my mind back to me and my little life. And I was overwhelmed with this sense of this life is so short. It's not a joke. And when our Creator is warning us about things, it's not because He's trying to ruin your weekend, but it's the opposite. He sees the long game, and because He's loving, He's trying to help you and I out. Jesus Himself in John 10, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. Well, that wraps up the intro this morning. And we're continuing with the 7 deadly sins, the summer of sin. And honestly, they didn't give me a very interesting sin. I got sloth. I saw a friend earlier today. You're like, what topic? You got sloth? They're like, what are you going to do with that? I'm like, well, we got to figure it out. I mean, because they make movies about other sins, interesting movies about wrath, about lust. Have you seen a movie made about sloth? I mean, there was that David Fincher film from the 90s. You remember that one, 7? There's a little section about sloth. It was pretty macabre and nasty. But usually the human propensity for sloth does not inspire popular art. If my daughter were here, she'd say, yeah, it's like an old man topic, that you're going to stand up front and wag your finger at young people, which is kind of true. But I think we will also find today that the finger wags back at some of us older people as well. Going back to that ancient Jewish text, the book of Proverbs, chapter 24, verse 21. Fear the Lord. Verse 30. I went past the field of a sluggard, past the vineyard of someone who has no sense. Thorns had come up everywhere. The ground was covered with weeds, and the stone wall was in ruins. I applied my heart to what I observed and learned a lesson from what I saw. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come on you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man. Well, sloth is a little different than some of the other sins besides being more boring. A lot of the other sins are called sins of commission, meaning you chose to do something you shouldn't have done, like wrath. You could be angry or even violent with someone. That's the sin of commission. I did something that maybe I shouldn't have done. Sloth is a little different. It's the sin of omission, neglecting to do something positive that I should have. So I want to start by giving you my definition for sloth. Sloth is neglecting to take proper, needful action. Sloth is choosing to remain passive when intentional, positive action is needed. Choosing to remain passive when intentional, positive action is needed. Now, I know there are some old people here that are like, that's right. That's my kid's problem. That's the younger generation problem. I hope they all listen to this. And that might be true, and we'll start there. But I want to start with a little bit of an apology. I'm going to, in a way that's not fair, stereotype all of us in here. It's just the easiest way to do it. I'm going to put us in 2 groups of people. I know you are more complicated than this, but I'm not sure how else to be clear in my communication today. So forgive me for overgeneralizing, and please avoid the temptation of showing me wrath after this service. Okay, so our first group, my friends who are young or creative or simply chill. Young, creative, or simply chill. And honestly, our popular culture finds you entertaining. I mean, people laugh when someone pulls a homer on them. Or people love the dude that abides, who doesn't love the dude. Or people just champion someone who's chilling and enjoying the good life. That's why we have influencers. Our popular culture finds all of this very enjoyable and entertaining. So I am going to sound like an old cranky guy today, sorry. But for my friends that are young or creative or chill, I have two reflections for you today. Number one, a chill life that just goes with the flow usually misses the mark. It's usually kind of off. Again, Proverbs 24:30. I went past the field of a sluggard, past the vineyard of someone who has no sense. 34. Poverty will come on you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man. Now, is there part of this that says, hey, young person, you should go out and get a job? Yes, that's an implication. But I think there's more going on here. There's kind of this understanding that to live a good life aligned with God, you have to actively cultivate it. You're not going to back your way into it. You're not going to float your way into being an incredible person. You actively choose that way of life. St. Paul, 1 Timothy 5. Anyone who does not provide for their relatives and especially for their own household has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Paul lays it right out. If you are not intentionally doing activity to help care for your family members, that's a sign you are in a bad place. Another passage of Paul, Ephesians 4. Anyone who has been stealing must steal no longer, but must work doing something useful with their own hands, that they may have something to share with those in need. So there's this sense of trusting and going the way of Jesus. It's not simply stop being a thief, but it's choosing to actively work to have a way of actively blessing other people. When we are aligned with our loving Creator, that's more of what our life looks like. Matthew 7, Jesus himself. Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. He's saying, if you're going to trust and learn life from me, you're going to take a different kind of life on. You're not going to just go with the flow. Jesus implies that if we're just kind of chill, just kind of taking it as comes, when our life winds down, like that dear soul I saw this week, we will realize that our life has been kind of a failure. Let me say this clearly. You are too important. Other people are too important. God is too important for you to simply float through life. This week I had a conversation with a woman who's about my age, and she's filled with anxiety, and she probably should be. Because she kind of feels it looks like a pretty awful tragedy is coming her way. And my guess is it will. And she's having a really hard time, as she should. So I did my best to empathize with her, to pray with her, to ask what I could do to help her, to let her know that I see her. But at some point in the conversation, as we're talking about this tragedy that is no fault of her own, I said, "What's your plan?" And she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, if this thing comes, and it's probably going to, and it's going to change your life forever, what is your plan about what you're going to do?" I mean, not Not to fix it, you probably can't fix it, but what is your plan to do to navigate life post this tragedy? And she said, I've never even thought about it. Friend, there is too much suffering, there is too much pain, there is too much tragedy in this world. You know it. Some of you are living it, someone you love is. There's only thing that makes it worse, and that is to suffer and go through tragedy and have zero plan about what to do. Life is too important. You are too important. Life is too hard to just float through it. Second reflection. It is not your fault if you struggle with slothfulness, but you are still responsible to partner with God and become someone who rises above it. If slothfulness is your struggle, it's not your fault. It doesn't mean you're a bad person, but it does mean you are responsible to partner with God and rise above it. What is the inner psychology of someone who's tempted with sloth? Again, remember my definition. Sloth is neglecting to take proper, needful action, choosing to remain passive when intentional, positive action is needed. How do you know if that's you? Well, people ask what your plan is, and you say, I don't have a plan. Or if someone's really frustrated with you and they're being a little cruel, they say things like, I need you to live in the real world. I need you to kind of grow up and act your age. Or inside, the inner reasoning is often a sense of, I really ought to do that today, but I'm not feeling it, so I guess I'll do it tomorrow. Or if you get some free time, you might say, I'm going to spend the whole day in bed. Or I'm going to lounge by the pool with a drink. Or I'm going to spend at least half the day playing video games. These are signs of this being a struggle. Now, there's a technical term to describe that kind of struggle you might have. I don't know if you're familiar with the Big Five factor model of personality. This is kind of the academic system that researchers of personality all around the world, all various cultures, use to understand people. It's not the Enneagram, it's not the Myers-Briggs typology, it's the Big Five factor model. And if a little bit that I just described in the last moment or two, you're like, I think that's me, the technical term is you are low in conscientiousness. That's how you would be described in research. People who are low in conscientiousness tend to be unorganized, tend to be late wherever they go. They tend to not think ahead. These are characteristics. What leads to someone being like that? Partly biology. Partly God made you like this. I would say your Creator literally hardwired your brain to be like this, because there are gifts from being low in conscientiousness. Creative people tend to be like this. If you're like this, you are way more fun. You tend to have the ability to roll with change more than most people. You tend to be a little more innovative. You have gifts, if I'm describing you, you have gifts that the rest of us need. God might have made you like this. But there's another part that tends to go to this personality type. And it's if you were born and raised when you were young in a very chaotic context with a lot of stress. Your brain wired in such a way to help you survive. It was a gift, but always keep your options open. Always live in the moment. Be ready to pivot at any time if you need to do something different. So if this is who you are, there's not something wrong with you, but you are responsible. And you do have that propensity to F things up. You likely need chosen spiritual practices, activities that are the opposite of your natural tendency, if you're going to become a more whole and virtuous person. You probably need to choose some spiritual practices that feel counterintuitive, but it's going to help you grow in virtue and be a more whole person. Things that are the opposite of your wiring. What do I mean? Well, I'll just name a couple you might want to try. One, sounds like a small thing, but decide Monday through Friday, no matter how your home or apartment operates, you're going to be the one to clean up the kitchen every night. Not your mom, not your super organized roommate. You're going to do it. Why? Because physically organizing, cleaning, putting things where they go runs a little bit against your grain. That might help balance a few things. Second possible practice, make a commitment every day. You're not going to go on your phone until you work out and have some time to read some ancient wisdom. So, a commitment to say, I'm not going on my phone until I've either hit the weights or I went for a run, or maybe I sat down with a book of Proverbs and read some ancient text. Then I will go on my phone. To kind of become a person with activity, positive, long-term beneficial activity is the first thing you do. Or maybe one more. Maybe you want to take someone out for coffee that you look up to. Someone that you admire their character, their integrity, their way of being, and ask them about their daily habits. Ask them about their daily routine. And then afterwards, pray to your Creator and say, what is something in their daily routine that I should take on even though I don't feel like it? That I should do that anyway. Again, you are wired to be who you are for a reason. You bring joy and you make life interesting to so many of us. I'm not saying if you're going to take Jesus seriously, you're going to become like your dad or your sister, the accountant. That's not what I'm saying. But don't miss out on the life God has for you because you avoid spiritual practices that are the opposite of your natural way of being. You need to be yourself, but more effectively. Okay, let's move on to the second group. Remember, I divided you in two. So we're moving on to your dad and your sister, the accountant. Friends who are older or organized or super productive. Older, organized, super productive. I only have one reflection for you, but I want you to catch this one. Slothfulness means more than you think. It doesn't mean merely chilling out when you should be busy. The sin of sloth also means neglecting the most important matters for mere busyness. I did not make this up. If you go back to earlier Christian writers, Evagrius of Pontus in the Eastern Church, Gregory the Great in the 6th century, Thomas Aquinas, they would say this same thing. The sin of sloth also means neglecting the most important matters for mere busyness. We all know that people can miss out on a good and virtuous life because they're drunk all the time and lost in YouTube. But we also have to be honest. There are people who are super active, who are super busy, who get a lot done, who miss out on the things that matter most. Happens all the time. And again, our popular entertainment also reveals this. Go back a couple generations to The Godfather. What was Michael Corleone's most famous line? It's not personal, it's strictly business. Who did he say this to? Someone he was going to kill. So Mario Puzo is intentionally being ironic. I think it's kind of personal to murder someone. But you're getting the psychology of the Godfather. That, I know you're not going to like this, but hey, I'm just trying to make money. So obviously it makes sense. Or go to the greatest maybe serial drama ever made, Breaking Bad, where you have Walter White wanting to make money for his family in a bad spot, becomes Heisenberg, cooking meth, also murdering people. Now, the writers of these shows are taking very extreme circumstances. Most of us are not a part of the Italian mafia or are going in the desert to cook drugs. That's not most of us. But they are entertaining with extreme situations, wanting you and I to see ourselves in them. Wanting us to think, what am I chasing that maybe is ultimately good, like making money for my family? Like being successful that's actually not being helpful and is hurting people. That's why they make these movies or shows. Jesus himself, Luke 12, he says, the ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. Then he said, this is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves but is not rich toward God. What is Jesus saying? There is a way of being that helps you climb the ladder at work, that makes you successful, that helps you get a whole lot of stuff done, but completely misses what matters most. It's what Jesus says. Even more direct, he asks in Mark 8, what good is it for someone to gain the whole world and yet forfeit their soul? Ouch. How do you know if this is you? High in conscientiousness. Well, maybe you're known for cleaning things that most people don't think they need to be cleaned. Inside of a trash can, garage floor. Maybe you relax by working out. Or when you get some free time and you want to unwind, you actually do an activity that other people in society get paid to do as a job. You're that kind of person. You're likely an all-star in the office. You might be a successful business owner. You may run your home. There's a good chance you run things around here, frankly. We need you. You're important. Your skills matter. But constant activity, the incessant completing of tasks, is a clever and maybe lucrative way of avoiding the most serious stuff in life. And it can be a real temptation. You have different aspects of who you are as a person, right? You have your intellect, you have your psyche, maybe we would use that to describe complex inner emotions. Obviously, you have your body, your spirit or your soul that relates directly to your creator. You have your personal relationships. But here's the deal. Any parts of who we are that we ignore because it's hard or it's awkward or I'm not sure what to do, so I just push that one off, I'm going to focus on other ones. It works in the short term, and maybe we really develop the other ones, but in the long run, it warps who you are. Maybe not this week or next month, but over time. Whatever you ignore, even if you're ignoring it because you're engaging in CrossFit, or you gotta wash the boat, or you gotta crank out another spreadsheet, whatever you ignore about your life over time will mess you and other people up. You also have a propensity to F things up. It's just different than people that chill and have a good time, but it's still there. As a pastor, I've had the privilege of being present with people through everything, and I mean the privilege about being there when people have suffered and went through terrible things. A spouse ODing, being in the room the moment a child passes away, lots of cancer. Again, there is no shortage of suffering in this world. But my experience says when people come to talk to me, not in grief, not in sudden loss, but when they talk to me with a deep-seated frustration, an ongoing hopelessness that has lasted forever and ever, it's normally about a parent or an authority figure who makes good money, who has an immaculate office, who can juggle lots of projects, and who never listens to them ever. That is the deepest, long, in your gut, gnawing pain I hear from people. If you're a successful, get-it-done person and you don't open yourself to the Spirit in the parts of your life where you feel vulnerable or not sure what to do or weak, you are going to hurt a lot of people. And because you're effective, you're going to hurt even more people. Your version of sloth is choosing efficiency and effectiveness over soul depth. And people do it every day. And because we all have this human propensity to mess things up, you too likely need chosen spiritual practices, activities that are the opposite of your natural tendency. If you're going to become a whole and virtuous person, we all need them. We all need spiritual practices that run against our grain. So what might this be for you? I'm only going to suggest one for you, just one. Take out younger members of your family to dinner, one-on-one, not as a whole group, and consider sending your employees an anonymous survey. And here's what you're going to ask your younger family members one-on-one or your employees. And again, these are people that you tend to think probably waste too much time and are not dialed in. You're going to ask them, what do they need from you that they haven't been getting? And whatever they say to you, do it. If it feels ridiculous, if it feels silly, if it feels awkward, if it feels irrelevant, your gut on these things is off, friend. And if you ask your younger family members one-on-one, what do they need from you that they haven't been getting, or you ask your employees in a survey, what do you need that I haven't been doing for you, whatever they say is probably right, but it won't feel like that to you. Do it anyway. If you do, even if it feels weird or not needed or silly, over time, I think you will experiencing your Creator moving closer to you. And when you graduate this life, like my dear friend this week at the hospital, you will not have regrets. And maybe more importantly, either will your younger family members or your employees. Lord God, thank you so much for my brothers and sisters who have come here this morning. On their day off, they've taken a step towards you, be here hoping to find something, some kind of spiritual connection with you. And I ask you to honor it, and I ask you to bless it. And I ask right now that you make it clear to them What is the spiritual practice they need to choose into that feels counterintuitive? Is it cleaning the kitchen? Is it Bible and workout before phone? Is it asking someone you look up to how they live and mimicking them? Or is it even going to family members and low-level employees and asking what they need and providing it? God, whatever that is, make that clear to my friends. Thank you for loving us enough to give us truth. Thank you for seeking our long-term best. Thank you for being better than we can ever imagine. And thank you again for my friends who have come hoping to hear from you. May that be the case. In Jesus' name, amen.